Welcome to the National Museum of the United States Air Force near Dayton, Ohio. We are the keepers of their stories. All airmen and guardians are vital to the success of the Department of the Air Force. Over the last several decades, many women have bravely broken through the societal barriers and gender stereotypes that had previously prevented women from serving in all capacities of the armed forces. Each decade, we have seen new leaders step up to battle issues plaguing women's advancement in a male environment. Explore women's history from the first female aviators through snipers and astronauts as you travel through the significant women's silhouette display. Continue exploring women's United States Air Force contributions and advancements through exhibits in each of the galleries, highlighted by brightly colored columns and markers. Follow the life of one of the United States' first notable female aviators, Jacqueline Cochran, through 5 galleries. Her story starts in the early years gallery and travels through the World War II, Korea, Cold War, and space galleries. Learn about her difficult childhood and how she learned to fly in 1932 for the advancement of her cosmetic business, followed by her involvement in World War II when she used her aviation skills and military knowledge to develop the Women Air Force Service pilots. Cochran remained involved in aviation her entire life for the advancement of women. After the war, she earned the title Fastest Woman when she became the first woman to break the sound barrier. Always interested in going faster and farther, she funded women's astronaut fitness tests in 1960. Prior to the creation of the Women Air Force Service pilots, American women joined the British Air Transport Auxiliary. In the Air Transport Auxiliary, women flew aircraft from factories to active service squadrons for the Royal Air Force. British women, like Mary Wilkins-Ellis, served as examples of how United States Army Air Forces could mobilize female pilots. In September 1942, the United States Army Air Forces established the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron and the Women's Flying Training Detachment. The 2 units soon merged to become the Women Air Force Service Pilots. The WASP, serving as civilians, solved a pilot shortage and performed important non-combat flying duties during World War II. In December 1944, after delivering more than 12,000 aircraft to military bases, the WASP were disbanded as the war began to slow. Without a need for female pilots, the women returned home without receiving military benefits until decades later. During World War II, American women joined the military in a temporary status. Beginning in July 1942, the first group of women began training with the Women's Army Corps. While most military women served as nurses and in administrative roles, the war also provided women opportunities to prove themselves capable in non-traditional roles. Serving in the United States, Europe, and the Pacific Theater, WAC members fulfilled weather observation, air traffic control, and mechanic duties, allowing men to perform jobs closer to the front lines and proving women could overcome male preconceptions of their abilities. The United States Army Air Forces revolutionized military medical care during World War II with air evacuation flights. These missions allowed medical professionals to move injured personnel quickly while providing care en route. Specially trained female nurses were vulnerable to enemy attack while traveling between front lines and hospitals. During World War II, over 1 million patients were safely evacuated. In 1948, President Harry Truman signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, permitting women to permanently join any branch of the military. However, the legislation limited women to only 2% of the military. 2 of the most recognizable women from this era were also the first to join the United States Air Force. Colonel Geraldine Pratt May, a reservist, was the first woman in the Air Force program director. As the top Air Force woman, she advised Air Force leadership on plans and policies for integrating women into the regular reserve forces. Sergeant Esther Blake, having been motivated to join the Women's Army Corps after her sons went missing in action, remained in the military due to her strong sense of patriotism. As the Air Force opened to women, she joined in the first minute of the first hour of the first day. During the Korean War, Captain Lillian Kinkela Keel was one of 30 Air Force flight nurses serving in the Korean battle zone. Having joined the military during World War II, She made 250 evacuation flights in England and France, plus several transatlantic flights caring for wounded soldiers. She returned to active duty during the Korean War and flew another 175 evacuation missions, making her one of the most accomplished women in the United States Air Force and one of the most decorated women in American military history. Her experiences during the two wars inspired the 1953 Hollywood movie Flight Nurse. Captain Mary Spivak is another example of the exceptional work female flight nurses provided during the Korean War. After many Korean citizens lost everything, American airmen organized relief programs and eventually evacuated orphans as communist forces moved closer. The evacuation to an island off the southern coast of Korea became known as Operation Kitty Car. During the movement, Captain Spivak helped load children into the 16 C-54 Skymasters used to relocate children, and also provided food and care while en route. Hundreds of Air Force women served at bases in South Vietnam and Thailand during the war in Southeast Asia, mostly performing traditional duties such as nursing and administrative work. Air Force flight nurses, many of them women, provided in-flight care to wounded personnel being evacuated. During the war, several important changes in federal law opened new opportunities for women. As South Vietnam collapsed under the weight of advancing communist forces, United States Air Force personnel were en route to evacuate orphans. On April 4, 1975, the first of several Operation Baby Lift flights took off from Tan Son Nhut Air Base, South Vietnam. Within 15 minutes, however, the rear cargo doors blew open. Unable to return to base, the C-5 crashed, killing many crew members, orphans, and escorts. In spite of being injured, the air and medical crew members, including First Lieutenant Regina Ayoun, carried children from the wreckage. Ayoun saved children even while suffering a broken foot and a compression fracture to her spine. During the 1960s and 1970s, servicewomen pushed for major changes that led to new opportunities. These policy adjustments were critical to women's full assimilation and ability to create military careers. New policies and legislation eliminated the separate Women in the Air Force program, opened new career fields, equalized promotion rights, and removed limitations on the number of women permitted to serve. In addition, women could choose to have both a military career and a family. In 1971, the Strzok versus Secretary of Defense Supreme Court case shed light on the imbalance in rights imposed on female service members. Captain Susan Strzok appealed the involuntary discharge she received when she became pregnant. By 1975, all services instituted the Department of Defense's policy that separation of women for pregnancy and parenthood would be voluntary. In 1977, the first group of 10 women graduated from undergraduate pilot training as part of the Air Force's test program for female pilots. The success of the first female pilot trainees was fundamental to the future of women on Air Force air crews. With the proven success of female pilots, additional aircrew positions opened to women, including navigator, flight engineer, and loadmaster. While women were initially limited on which aircraft and missions they could support, Department of Defense policy evolved in the 1990s to allow women to pilot all aircraft in the Air Force and fly combat missions. Civil engineering accepted its first female civil engineer in 1971. Suzanne Achenbach-Waylitz's arrival at the civil engineering career field broke through a barrier so that other women had a path to follow and leave their own marks. Women's arrival into non-traditional career fields received much attention, including from top Air Force leadership. Teresa Carter used the path paved by Waylett to excel in the same career field. Earning the top Air Force civil engineer position, Major General Carter proved that barriers blocking women in a profession previously closed off to them could be overcome. Based on the 1948 combat exclusion policy, women's role in the United States Air Force was limited for many years. Limitations included not flying fighter aircraft or going into combat situations. In 1993, the DoD lifted the aviation portion of the combat exclusion policy, allowing women to serve in almost any aviation capacity in the Air Force. However, restrictions remained on aviation units in direct support of ground units and special operation aviation units. As leadership slowly dismantled the combat exclusion policy, women gained opportunities to do what they had always dreamed of doing: Jeannie Leavitt became the first woman to graduate from fighter pilot school, creating a path for other women to follow in combat roles, including Martha McSally, Christine Mao, Shauna Kimbrell, and Vanessa Dobos. With the change in policy, women gained opportunities and accepted the same risks men did while performing dangerous tasks. As terrorists attacked the United States on September 11, 2001, Lieutenant Heather Penny accepted the risk when she took to the air in an unarmed F-16, tasked to remove a hijacked commercial flight by any means necessary. In 2005, Airman First Class Elizabeth Jacobson paid the ultimate price for freedom when she was killed in Iraq. Jacobson was the first female United States airman killed in the line of duty in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and the first Air Force Security Forces member killed in conflict since the Southeast Asia War. In 1993, the DoD revised the combat exclusion policy and expanded opportunities for female pilots. Women training as fighter pilots thus had the opportunity to try out for the elite Thunderbirds aerial demonstration team. In 2005, Captain Nicole Malachowski became the first woman to earn a position on the team. With 9 years of experience in the F-15, she served for 2 seasons with the high-performance jet team flying an F-16 in the Diamond Formation. The following year, Captain Samantha Weeks became the second female pilot to join the team and the first woman to earn a coveted solo performer position. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law on November 8, 1967, new policies that allowed military women to achieve higher ranks in larger numbers. Since that time, many women have served in leadership roles, and their unprecedented success has widened the path for other women to succeed. Some of the earliest and most recognizable female leaders include Major General Jeanne Holm and Chief Master Sergeant Grace Peterson. General Holm, as Director of Women in the Air Force program, revised discriminatory policies, doubled WASP strength, increased job and assignment opportunities, and modernized uniforms. Chief Peterson was one of the first Chief Master Sergeants in the Air Force and excelled as a mentor to many women. Most recently, in 2020, Chief Master Sergeant Joanne Bass was appointed the first female Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. In June 1978, women joined previously male-only missile launch control centers as combat crew commanders and missile technicians. Initially, women's presence raised objections. However, concerns about space constraints and working in mixed-gender crews were dealt with, and the types of intercontinental ballistic missiles they served on expanded to include Minuteman and Peacekeeper. Beatrice Finkelstein, an Air Force research nutritionist and dietitian, experimented with a variety of unusual meat dishes and concentrated ice cream mix blends when developing some of the first food eaten in space. She focused on creating food that would have the right consistency, flavor, and nutrition while still performing well in a zero-gravity environment. She created thin, high-protein, semi-liquid foods in collapsible tubes that allowed astronauts to operate for long periods of time in space. In January 1978, NASA selected the first 6 women to train for the Space Shuttle program. This class also produced the position of mission specialists. In the following years, astronautics continued to open up to women. In 1993, Air Force Major Susan Helms became the first United States military woman in space. She conducted experiments, was the first woman to work aboard the International Space Station, and set the world record for the longest spacewalk of 8 hours and 56 minutes. Eileen Collins reached 2 major milestones for women when she served as the first woman to pilot a space shuttle and as a mission commander. Collins wore this when she served as the first female space shuttle pilot in 1995 aboard Discovery. With women having opened the pathway to space, Pamela Melroy became the second woman to command a space shuttle. During that mission, she made history as one of 2 female commanders in orbit at the same time, when Peggy Whitson served as the first female International Space Station commander. Women have developed numerous gadgets and tools from everyday items to specialized military equipment. Drawing from their education and previous experience, women from various backgrounds developed cutting-edge inventions, providing protection, comfort, and nourishment to airmen over the decades. In the 1960s, Lee Curry Rock, a mechanical engineer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, designed a new zipper. The innovative pressure seal was used on full pressure space and diving suits, as well as engine covers and shipping containers for airtight and watertight enclosures while allowing flexibility. Alice King Chatham was notable in creating numerous items of high-altitude protective gear. With an unexpected background in fine arts, Chatham's knowledge of anatomy was essential in designing restraints and tethering devices for humans and animal test subjects, and custom-fit masks and helmets for astronauts. On May 9, 1983, an all-female aircrew performed the first USAF transatlantic flight operated solely by women. The crew flew a C-141B Starlifter from McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, to Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany. During the round-trip flight, the crew air evacuated seriously ill patients and transported other service personnel and family members from West Germany to Washington, D.C. The mission demonstrated the importance and growing presence of women in airborne operations, a traditionally male career field. Since women first joined the military, they have broken down many barriers and created pathways to success for themselves and for the women that would follow. Throughout the Women in the Air Force exhibit, there are numerous stories of struggle and success that have led to today's military women to where she is today. Currently, all opportunities in the Department of the Air Force are open to women who are able to meet the requirements, whether they're interested in serving as a pilot, mechanic, missileer, or nurse. All careers, all airmen, and all guardians are vital to the continued success of the Department of the Air Force. Visit our website for more information and for photos of the Women in the Air Force exhibit.